Hello. So for today's demonstration, I'm going to be showing you all how to make a pinch pot flower vase. So you can see here, this is the final piece, but I'll show you another variation of this. But yeah, so we're going to be starting off this with just some basic pinch pots, and we're going to go from there. Okay, so what we're going to need for this project is we're going to need 2 balls of clay to make pinch pots. These are about £1 pound each. You could go a little bit more or a little bit less. There's also a little wad of clay we're going to have set aside to make feet or to make, some decorative add-ons later. We're going to need a tool for scoring. I've got this little tiny tool with all these little bitty pins pushed through it here. You can see, there we go. You could also just use a fork. There we go. You could also just use a couple of toothpicks. Anything you're going to need to kind of scratch and attach. You can also use a toothbrush, which I have here. Already has a little bit of slip on it, though you can see it's a little messy, but a toothbrush will also work for scratching and attaching. Alright, so now that we have our clay and our tools ready, we're going to start by just creating 2 pinch pots. If you haven't done this before, it's pretty easy. You're just going to take your ball of clay and you're going to press down right in the center to create a little divot. So you can see I started there, just pushing my thumb right into the middle, create a little divot like that. And then I'm going to take my fingers and make kind of like a little duck face, And I'm going to push my thumb back down in the center. I'm going to squeeze my thumb into my fingers on the outside. And as I do that, I'm going to turn that wad of clay. And I'm just pinching that all the way around. You can see I've got a little hole in the center here that's gotten quite a bit larger. You can also switch hands and do it with the other hand. If you like, you can even set this down on the table and use both hands. So as I'm doing this, I'm pinching with both hands and I'm just kind of spinning that pot around. So getting a little bit larger. You can see too, some spots might not be quite even. Some are going to have a little bit more clay than others. You can just kind of go back and focus on those places as you go along and kind of pinch that clay out a little bit more. If it's not, completely even in terms of the thickness of the walls, I think that that's okay. So again, just kind of turning and pinching and turning and pinching, going all the way around that pot. You can see now we've got that nice hollow area here. It's kind of round, not completely round. We've got a little bit of a flat bottom, obviously, because I had that sitting down on my table. You can go back through now and pushing your thumbs on the inside, maybe work your fingers around the base there. Let me see, there we go. Again, just trying to kind of thin that out, move some more of that clay around. Alright, so there we go. That's one of 2 pinch pots we need to start with. So I'm going to go ahead and create my second pinch pot. I'll be right back. Alright, so I've created that second pinch pot. Now I have 2 little pinch pots here. You can see not super big, about the size of my, hands here. Now what we need to do is we need to put these together to create a closed form. So we're basically just creating a nice big hollow ball of clay. So to do that, we're going to need a scoring tool. So again, you can just go to your fork. If you've got a little tiny scoring tool with all the little pins in there, you could try that. You could use just a handful of toothpicks, or you can go to your toothbrush with a little bit of slip on there. I'm going to just use the fork for now to get started, and I'm just going to go through. I'm going to scratch around all the edges. It's not going to look super pretty to start, but that's okay. We've got plenty of time to smooth this out. I'm going to go over to the second one here now and do the same. And we're just roughing up those edges to create kind of like a Velcro-like surface, so that when we apply some slip to this, it's going to latch into place and it'll kind of like glue into place, right? So we've got those surfaces nice and scored all over the place. I can go over here to my handy dandy toothbrush. It's got a little bit of clay slip on there. I'm just going to kind of brush that around. I don't want to get it too like sloppy wet. Oop, lost a chunk. put that right back on top there. But we do want to make sure that we've got a little bit on there. Now this clay is really pretty soft, so I could actually probably get away without using any slip at this step, but just for the sake of going through the process, maybe your clay is a little bit stiffer. We've got our scoring and our slip on there, and then we're just going to take these two pieces. We're going to kind of just mush them together. If there's a little bit of overlap, maybe your pinch pots don't fit together real great, that's okay. We're going to kind of squish them together. I like to kind of hold them in the palms of my hands like this, kind of fold those seams over each other just a little bit. We're not smoothing anything out yet, we're just kind of getting them to work together, to stay together, so that, you know, when I try to pull them apart, it's a little bit tough. So I'm going through, just kind of pressing my thumbs into the seam a little bit now. So you can see I've got this real funky shape going on, but we're almost there. We've almost got our clothes formed. So the next thing I'm going to do is just go through with my thumb and smooth that down. So this is going to take a lot of like back and forth to get a nice solid seam and get it nice and smoothed out. And again, that's okay. We've got time. Can work on that. If you get to a point where you've got more on one side than the other, you can just kind of flip over and push it down into the other side. So before I was working up this way with my thumb, now I'm working down this way. It's really just a matter of which side seems to have the most clay. So you can see it's pretty funky. We've got this like crater, kind of, not crater, but this, you know, crack going down through the middle here. We're just going to continue to smooth that out. So now I'm going over top of that and smoothing that down this way. I've got this little like chunk of clay that's come off. I'm just going to set that aside. Okay, so now that I've closed that up, we move on to the next step. I'm going to kind of paddle this down a little bit, and then we're going to smooth over it again. Okay, so now that we've got this kind of put together, I'd mentioned we're going to paddle this form a little bit. One tool I forgot to mention was having some sort of paddle tool. So that could be anything from a wooden spoon, or in my case, I've got a little paint stir stick, or maybe just have a little piece of wood lying around. You just need something that's going to allow you to kind of, you know, go through and paddle around the edges. So to do that, I'm just going to pick up my piece, holding my stick here. And I'm focusing right now on just going over that seam that I smoothed out. Okay, so maybe you don't have something that you could use as a paddle, you know, a piece of wood or a spoon or whatever lying around the house. You can just do this with your hands. So holding with one hand, and kind of flipping that as you go, and just using your hand as your paddle. You probably want to switch directions, so right now I've got it facing this way. I'm going to take that, flip it around. So you can see now it's kind of creating more of an oval, oblong shape. That's what I'm going for this project. However, you can kind of see as we go along, it doesn't have to be oval. It could be completely round. You could turn this into more of like a rectangle or a square form if you like, using your paddle or your hands. But I like these oval forms, so that's what I'm going to continue to work with. So I'm going to paddle this a little bit more, smooth it out just a little bit. So as you do this, if you come across any like little cracks or creases in the clay, you can just take your finger and smooth those out a little bit. I'm not going to worry about it too much until I get closer to the shape that I want, and then I'll go back in and kind of fine tune all those little details. Again, turning. Stopping every now and again to kind of get a look at a distance at your shape. Is it looking fairly even? are there any sides that seem a little heavier or a little lighter than others? So right now it looks to me like this side's a little bit thicker than this side. So I'm going to paddle down this side just a little bit more. Okay. All right, that's looking pretty good. I've got a nice oval shape going on here. All right, so now I'm happy with my shape. I'm gonna go ahead and smooth this out a little bit. Another tool I have is just some cut up plastic Tupperware container lids, some like takeout container lids. Cut these out in like a little half circle or like a crescent moon shape, and you can use these as a great tool for just kind of smoothing down areas of your clay. So again, holding with one hand, I'm just gonna go over the surface, smooth these down. This is great to kind of continue to compress that clay. So as we were paddling these before, either using, you know, a wooden tool or spoon or just our hands to kind of get that into the shape we want, we're compressing the clay down a little bit. This is going to help us to really smooth out that surface. Again, turning and smoothing out. So if you do make a little tool out of a Tupperware container, you're going to want to make sure that you don't leave any burrs on the edge. You can kind of get rid of those with a little bit of sandpaper, or just some mindful trimming with a pair of scissors. But if you leave those little burrs on there, you'll end up with some digs or scratches in your clay. Okay, so it's fairly smooth. There's still a few minor little dings and dents in there, but you know, I don't think we're gonna worry about that too much at this point. So, got my shape. I'm gonna move on to the next step. So I'm gonna set this aside and work on creating little feet. All right, so now that I have my oblong, you know, hollow ball of clay, my 2 pinch pots pieced together, I'm gonna set that aside, let that stiffen up a little bit because we need to make some cuts on that in a little while. But I don't want to do that while it's still really soft. So we're just going to let that rest. In the meantime, we're going to make some feet. So I've got that wad of clay sitting around here. I'm going to rip off 4 pieces, roughly the same size. They do not need to be identical. We're not weighing these or anything. All right, that looks reasonable. I'm going to pinch that a little bit off there. I'm just going to roll these out. Create like a little ball of clay to start. And then just rolling them in the palm of my hand, create like a little cone shape. Something about little cone feet really just tickle me. I think they look cute. So we're going to do these little cone shapes. Let me see, can you guys see that okay there? And we can take a minute and kind of smooth those out at the bottom a little bit. Almost like a little teardrop kind of shape. All right, we're going to do that 3 more times. But you do not need to make this shape. You can make whatever shape you want, or maybe you just don't want to put little feet on there at all. I can kind of give you a quick how-to. If you don't want to put feet at the bottom, you just want to make sure you've got a flat base so that thing doesn't go rolling off with your flowers off your table. Again, just making those little teardrop shapes, rolling that out in my hand, smoothing out with my thumb. Okay, I'll set that one aside. I'm just going to do this with these last 2. All right, so I finished rolling out my feet. I've got all 4 sitting here ready to go. Kind of that like teardroppy shape going on. Again, you don't have to do that exact shape. You can do whatever shape you wish. You just want to keep them all 4 about the same size. And we are going to come back to these in a little bit. So just like our ball piece that we created earlier with the 2 pinch pots, we're going to set these aside. Not for too long, but we do want them to stiffen up just a little bit. Okay, so now that we've given our stuff some time to set up, we're going to go ahead and add the feet to the bottom of our hollow clay ball here that we've got. let's say you don't want to add feet, you can simply just take your ball, hold it with two hands. And again, I'm doing this so that it's kind of short and wide. If you wanted to, you could do it the opposite way, make it nice and tall. But for the demo that I'm doing today, I'm just going to keep it short. So hold that, two hands, and just tap it on your table surface. And all you're doing is just creating a nice flat bottom so that it just doesn't roll off the table. You could then take, a little plastic tool, flatten that out a little bit. You could even use your paddle. And create a nice flat edge that way. So you can see it's a little bit flatter than the other side. All right. So that's one way that you can create your bottom to this piece, but we're going to add some feet. So I'm going to flip it over now. So this little flat side that I was just demonstrating is actually facing upwards. And we're going to find my 4 points to put our little feet on here. So you probably remember we worked on these little feet earlier. Got all 4 of them set. I need to create little places where they're going to attach. So I'm thinking of, about an inch in or an inch and a half in from both ends. Gonna kind of eyeball that. It doesn't need to be super precise. You can kind of get away with pulling these off and adjusting them, and then just smoothing out the areas where you had scored and slipped from earlier. We're not doing a whole lot of measuring, we're just kind of going for it. So I'm using my little scoring tool here, and then I want the tiny points facing out. These are what's going to be touching the table, is the tiny ends. So I'm going to score the round ends because those are what's going to be attaching to the body of our piece here. Okay, and then using a handy dandy toothbrush, I'm going to add some slip. Same over here. All right, kind of mush that down a little bit, so I'm going to go back and score over top of that. Okay, and then I'm just going to gently kind of push and twist, wiggle those on a little bit. I don't want them, personally, I don't want them facing straight up. I like to have these feet kind of out at a bit of an angle like that. It's just going to give it a little bit more balance and help keep it from like teetering left to right if those feet are outwards a little bit on an angle versus straight up and down or even tilting inwards. So again, we're going a little outwards with these feet. All right, so I scored and slipped all my feet on here, but at a glance you can see they're a little bit off. So I'm just going to kind of wiggle these around a little bit to the left and to the right, try and get them as even as I can. Pushing down a little bit, smoothing that out. As I'm pushing down, there's a little bit of slip kind of squishing out around the sides, and that's fine. We can go back in later. If you've got like a little brush, I like to use a brush to kind of smooth out those areas where the slip has pushed through. All right, I'm kind of just taking a look at this. Seems all right, not too bad. Flip it around, taking a look at the other side, seeing if I need to adjust those feet at all over there. All right, now moment of truth. I'm going to set it down. All right, seems fairly steady. Those cute little feet down there. Around this way seems pretty steady. This foot seems like it could move just a little bit over. Smooth that up a little bit. I'm just working on a old towel down here, so just kind of wipe my hands off on that. Okay, all right. Now we've got our little feet attached, ready to go. This thing's standing on its own, ready to walk away. All right, feet on. Okay, so now that we have our feet on, I'm going to try to create a oval shape at the top here. That's going to be our opening for our little bud vase here for our flowers. But to do that, I'm going to try and kind of mimic the shape that I have there again, which is kind of like an oval shape. So I'm going to create an oval opening, and I'm just taking a toothpick at this point and using that as kind of a tool to kind of draw out my line before actually making any cuts through here. And I'm going to kind of just take a look at it, make sure it seems pretty even. Let's see. So I'm holding my piece, kind of just looking at it from the front end, making sure that that looks pretty even left to right, front to back. That looks pretty good to me. So now I'm going to go ahead and cut through. There we go. That's what I was looking for. So this is just a little twisted around paper clip. I untwisted it, retwisted it, so now it's a multi-purpose tool. We've got a pin tool on one side, sgraffito tool on the other side, a little loop. So I'm going to use this to cut through and create my opening. So I'm going to just push all the way through and then just follow all the way around that line I created just moments ago. Okay, should be able to pop that out. Looks like I need to go a little bit deeper on this end. Let's see, will that work? I think so. A little bit more around this side. All right, so we've got our opening created, but you can see it's quite jagged. So I'm going to go back in. I'm just going to smooth that down. Just using my finger, smoothing the edges down around the inside. So at this point, you're probably getting a gander on the inside of these two pinch pots you've put together. And you can see that there's quite the crevice. It's really kind of hard to see in there, but you can see where those two pots go together. And you can just either, gently using your finger, go down and smooth those out on the inside. If you've got like a long stick tool, or even for me, I'm going to use the back of this fork. Hopefully not break the fork, and smooth that crease down. Any excess clay that comes up, I'll just set that aside. Put this around. Okay. All right, so that's smoothed out a little bit more on the inside there. Go smooth it a little bit more. So now I'm just using my thumb, smoothing out those edges on the interior. Again, flipping that around. Smoothing out those edges. Okay, now I'm just going back through the top where that opening is, smoothing that down. Again, just using my finger. Okay, so now we have our opening. Kind of looks like a little piggy bank almost, for gigantic, comically large coins. But unfortunately, I don't have any of those, so we're going to keep working and do something else with this. So if you wanted to at this point, you certainly could stop here and just say, all right, I've got my opening. I throw a couple little flower buds in there, call it a day. But I think we're going to build up on this a little bit, give it a little bit more height. Okay, so we've got our opening set up. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to just roll out a nice long coil, right? So I already rolled this out. It's not super even, but that's okay. What I'm trying to do is get a coil that's going to fit all the way around the top of this opening. So you can see it's got a little bit of overlap here. I'm just going to pinch that off. All right. So the idea is we're going to build this up a little bit, coil by coil. So I'm going to remove this. I'm going to take my little scratchy needle tools here. I'm going to scratch all the way around the opening. Now I'm going to smooth my coils together just a little bit now, so it's just one cohesive piece. It's one big loop. Okay, I'm going to do the same thing on this. I'm going to scratch the sides that's going to connect. Now I'm going to add just a little bit of slip on there. A little on here. I like to go back over it one more time once I add that slip. Really kind of stir it all around. Okay, and then I'm going to put my coil on top. And bring this just a little bit closer to me. And again, you can go back and use the back end of a fork here if you have some other tools. I'm going to smooth that coil into place. Just using the back end of that tool to move that clay around, blend those two chunks of clay together. Kind of go around in there. Gonna be get a little bit of clay, just kind of wipe that off, set that aside. Smoothing that out. All right. So from there, it's kind of up to you if you'd like to make this go quite a bit higher or if you want to leave it fairly short. I'm going to roll out a few more coils. I'm going to add a few more on onto my piece here. So we'll see what that looks like. All right, so that's just with the one coil addition. Okay, so I went ahead and added some more coils to this one here. You can see I've got a stack of 3. So again, that's up to you if you decide you want to continue stacking these coils a little bit higher, or if you prefer to leave it kind of short. This is also a time where you can kind of take, your sponge, smooth out the edges a little bit, kind of make those a little bit more, a little cleaned up a little bit. And then you can also decide too, obviously, aesthetically, if you like the look of the coils stacked, or if you see on this side, I went ahead and already started smoothing out the lines of the coils, which I think is what I'm going to go with. So I'm going to go ahead and finish smoothing out those lines. Again, this is your choice, however you decide to proceed. If you want to smooth out your coils or leave your coils visible, or stop at one coil, or maybe you want to do 7 or 8 coils up. As long as it's stable and it's not going to tip over, go for it. Okay, so now that I went ahead and smoothed out both sides, got rid of all those coil lines, I've decided that although we could keep it more round, I think it's going to be kind of cute to square off these edges a little bit. So I'm just taking my finger with one thumb on the inside here supporting it. I'm just squaring those edges off. We've got a lot of round happening on this piece. The body's round, the feet are, soft and round. I think having this hard edge at the top will be kind of nice. Doing it on the other side too. Facing you guys, I'm going to have my hand here and kind of do that from the inside, or go back to that method. Thumb on the inside, and then just kind of pinching those edges like that, and then kind of smoothing out. The top isn't level. I think visually that's okay. That's got some edges that are kind of higher and bumpier than others. If you wanted to level that out, you could do that just using whatever cutting tool you've got. Go through and kind of create a nice level edge, but I like the way it looks, so I'm going to leave it. Okay, so now we've got our vase opening up at the top here. We've got our little feet at the bottom here, all 4. Again, kind of sticking outwards a little bit. We don't want them going straight up. We don't want them going in. want them out a little bit to help give them a little bit more stability so that your stuff doesn't fall over. Okay, so now we've got our vase all set, and now we can just add some more little fun things to this. Okay, so some ways that you can try to decorate these or think about decorating is like this, for instance. I didn't scratch and attach these yet because I'm still playing around, but you can make a bunch of really thin coils, real thin, and just loop them over just like bunny ear shoelaces, right? And you can just kind of pinch off the excess. You would just scratch and attach those right into place, and you get these really kind of delicate hoops and curls happening all the way around. So that's one way you could consider decorating these. So maybe you really like this top, you don't want to mess around with that at all, but you want to put something over here. You could cut out just little triangles out of a nice thin slab, and then what I did was just kind of cut a little curved bit out of here, and you could scratch and attach those onto the side, make yourself some wild little shark fin handle ornamental pieces going on the side there like that. I kind of like that actually. Or you could combine the two, maybe you like both, these hard angles and those soft loops. It's really, at this point, just use your imagination, really play around with stuff. You can kind of keep playing around with these different shapes and repeated kind of patterns and things. As long as you don't score and slip them, you can kind of just keep horsing around with them until you find something that you really like. Okay, so you can see I went ahead and just kind of stuck with the little loops up at the top, those little loopy coils all the way around. Kind of looks, I don't know, like a crown a little bit. I threw a little loop on each side, kind of like little, almost like little tiny itty bitty handles. But yeah, so that's just one way that you can start with 2 pinch pots and end up with a fun, funky little vase. Also got another demo that I made here. Let me set this one back a little bit. So same concept. This was made using just 2 pinch pots, scored and slipped together, and then I cut a oval opening up at the top, and again just used a coil up at the top and kind of pinched that flat, and then I laid coil strips over top to act as like little separators, almost like a flower brick. We've got the little feet at the bottom and some little handles on the side. So yeah, that's just some examples of what you can do with that technique. It's pretty broad ranging, so really have fun with it and just play around and experiment with different techniques and ways to decorate and kind of finalize your pieces. So yeah, there we go. Pinch pot flower vases. All right, thanks for watching.